The 1960s gave us some of television's most legendary series: Star Trek, The Twilight Zone, The Andy Griffith Show. But for every timeless classic, there were dozens of shows that didn't survive. Some were too weird, too boring, or just too far ahead of their time. They flopped so hard that networks canceled them almost instantly, sometimes after only one episode. Today, we're digging up 12 forgotten 60s TV shows that were huge flops. And while every show on this list is strange in its own way, just wait until we reach the top 3. Those disasters were so bizarre, so ill-conceived, that you'll be left wondering how they ever made it to air in the first place. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to Vintaverse, hit that like button, and share this video with someone who loves strange forgotten television. And tell us in the comments which of these flops you think deserves to stay buried. Number 12. The Hathaways, 1961-1962. Television in the early 1960s was full of suburban sitcoms. Families tuned in every week to watch ordinary households deal with everyday problems. But ABC decided to put a bizarre twist on that formula, and what they delivered was one of the strangest shows to ever hit the air. The Hathaways followed Walter and Eleanor Hathaway, a middle-class couple living in Los Angeles. But here's the hook: their children weren't human at all. They were 3 chimpanzees named Candy, Charlie, and Enoch. These weren't just pets. The show insisted they were fully adopted family members, treated as if they were human kids. Each chimp even had their own personality quirks, with Candy as the girl, Charlie the mischievous one, and Enoch often dressed in glasses to look studious. Behind the scenes, these were the real-life marquee chimps, a trained act that had appeared in commercials and variety shows. ABC thought putting them into a weekly sitcom would be TV gold. Instead, it was chaos. The chimps were unpredictable on set, often ignoring cues, pulling at the actors' wigs, or destroying props mid-scene. Jack Weston and Peggy Cass, both accomplished actors, were forced to play it straight, delivering corny sitcom lines while their kids ran wild. Critics didn't just dislike it, they ridiculed it. The New York Times called it disturbingly unfunny. Others questioned why ABC thought audiences would want to watch a chimpanzee family week after week. Ratings tanked, and the show was canceled after a single season. Number 11. Camp Run Amok. The summer camp experience was a rite of passage for many kids in the 1960s. NBC thought it could capture that spirit in a wacky sitcom, and so Camp Run Amok was born. The show centered on a chaotic boys' summer camp run by well-meaning but incompetent counselors. Each week brought new hijinks: food fights in the mess hall, campers playing endless pranks, and a camp director constantly at his breaking point. Across the lake was the rival girls' camp, adding romantic crushes, comic misunderstandings, and the occasional slapstick showdown. On paper, it sounded like harmless fun. The cast was filled with energetic young actors and comedians ready to bring the camp experience to life. But once it aired, the problems became clear. The jokes felt dated and repetitive, relying on pie-in-the-face slapstick and recycled gags that audiences had already seen done better on shows like Gilligan's Island. Instead of feeling fresh, it felt second-rate. Here's something most people don't know. NBC actually marketed Camp Run Amok heavily, expecting it to be a family favorite. Merchandising was even planned. But when the ratings came in, the enthusiasm evaporated. Audiences weren't laughing. Critics called it painfully juvenile. And within one season, it was gone. Number 10. The Tammy Grimes Show, 1966. By the mid-60s, networks were looking for star vehicles, shows built entirely around a charismatic performer. NBC thought they had a sure winner with Broadway sensation Tammy Grimes. Fresh off her Tony Award, Grimes was known for her quirky stage presence and unique voice. The idea was simple: put her front and center in her own sitcom, and audiences would fall in love. The Tammy Grimes Show cast her as Tammy Ward, a wealthy heiress who refused to take life seriously. Instead of working or living responsibly, Tammy spent her days spending money, chasing adventures, and exasperating the people around her, especially her controlling uncle, Uncle Simon, who constantly tried to rein her in. But what worked on stage didn't translate to TV. Tammy's eccentric mannerisms, which Broadway audiences found charming, came across as odd and grating in the more intimate medium of television. Viewers found her character spoiled and unlikable. Critics didn't hold back either. One review called it a disaster from the opening frame. Here's the shocking part. NBC canceled it after just 4 episodes. That's right, the show didn't even make it through its first month. It became one of the fastest cancellations in network history at the time. Several completed episodes never even aired. Number 9. The New People, 1969. By the end of the 60s, television was starting to experiment with darker, more socially conscious themes. ABC tried something bold with The New People, a series about survival, society, and the chaos of youth. The story began with a group of college students whose plane crashes on a remote Pacific island. The twist? Every adult on board is killed, leaving the young survivors to fend for themselves. Instead of a paradise, they find a deserted government facility stocked with supplies. Suddenly, these students have to build a brand new civilization. No parents, no authority, just them and the burden of creating their own rules. The characters reflected the times: anti-war activists, counterculture rebels, idealists, and cynics. Each episode tackled issues like race, politics, and morality. It was essentially Lord of the Flies meets Lost, but decades ahead of its time. The problem? Audiences weren't ready for it. Viewers tuning into ABC on Monday nights expected escapist fun, not a grim parable about society's failures. Ratings plummeted. Critics complained it was too dark for prime time, and sponsors worried about the heavy themes. After just 1 season, it was quietly canceled. Here's the kicker most people don't know. The pilot was written by Rod Serling, the genius behind the Twilight Zone. Even his involvement couldn't save it. Today, The New People is remembered as a fascinating experiment, a show that tried to say something important but ended up stranded in the rubble of its own ambition. Number 8. It's About Time, 1966. Sitcoms in the 60s often loved bizarre premises, and It's About Time may be one of the strangest. Created by Sherwood Schwartz, the same man behind Gilligan's Island, the show followed 2 bumbling astronauts who accidentally travel back in time and end up living with a family of cavemen. The caveman family included Shad, his wife, and their children, all trying to make sense of their new space-age friends. Episodes revolved around the astronauts attempting to survive in the prehistoric world while teaching the cavemen modern inventions like matches or cooking techniques. The theme song even cheerfully explained the entire premise. At first, it was a quirky twist on the fish-out-of-water comedy, but audiences quickly lost interest. Critics complained that the caveman humor felt repetitive and childish. Halfway through the season, the producers panicked and flipped the script, literally. Instead of astronauts living with cavemen, the cavemen were brought to the modern world. Suddenly, the show became about cave people navigating the 20th century. This desperate format change confused audiences and killed any momentum the show had. After 1 season, it was gone. Number 7. My Mother the Car, 1965. And now we come to what many critics still call the worst sitcom of all time. My Mother the Car was a series so ridiculous that people who hear about it today often assume it was a joke. But no, it was very real, and it really aired in 1965. The premise? A man named Dave Crabtree, played by Jerry Van Dyke, buys an old car, a 1928 Porter touring car. But this isn't any car. Through the radio, it speaks to him in the voice of his deceased mother, who has been reincarnated as the vehicle. Yes, his mom was now his car. Each episode revolved around Dave trying to keep his talking car a secret, while also dealing with its constant advice, nagging, and attempts to steer his life, literally and figuratively. The supporting cast included Ann Sothern as the voice of Mother and Avery Schreiber as a villainous car collector trying to steal the magical vehicle. NBC promoted it heavily, believing audiences would embrace its quirky charm. Instead, it became a laughingstock. Critics shredded it, with TV Guide ranking it among the worst shows ever made. Viewers tuned out almost immediately, and the show sputtered to an end after just 1 season. What most people don't realize is that Jerry Van Dyke actually turned down a role on Gilligan's Island to star in this series, a career decision he later regretted. Today, My Mother the Car is remembered only as a bizarre footnote in television history, the kind of flop so outrageous that it almost feels legendary. Number 6. Mr. Terrific, 1967. The mid-1960s were dominated by superheroes. Batman was a pop culture phenomenon, and every network wanted a slice of the action. CBS threw their hat into the ring with Mr. Terrific, a lighthearted superhero parody that aired in 1967. The series followed Stanley Beamish, a meek, bumbling gas station attendant who was secretly an undercover government agent. His superpowers didn't come from alien origins or radioactive accidents, but from swallowing a special power pill that gave him the strength of 100 men, but only for 1 hour at a time. The setup allowed for endless comedic scenarios where Stanley's powers wore off at the worst possible moment, leaving him helpless. The character was played by Steven Strimple, with John MacGyver as his uptight boss. The show leaned heavily into slapstick, trying to ride the wave of Batman's campy humor, but audiences weren't impressed. Critics dismissed it as a cheap imitation, and the power pill gimmick drew complaints from parents worried it glamorized drug use at a time when America was in the midst of anti-drug campaigns. Here's a fact most viewers never knew. CBS initially planned crossovers with Batman, but the idea was scrapped when ratings for Mr. Terrific came in disastrously low. The show was canceled after just 17 episodes, leaving it buried in obscurity. Number 5. Captain Nice, 1967. If Mr. Terrific wasn't strange enough, NBC decided to launch their own superhero spoof the very same year. The result was Captain Nice, a series so similar in tone and timing that many viewers thought the two shows were connected. Captain Nice starred William Daniels, who would later voice Kit in Knight Rider, as Carter Nash, a mild-mannered chemist who discovers a secret formula that gives him super strength, flight, and near invincibility. The catch? He had no idea how to use them. Clumsy, timid, and constantly nagged by his overbearing mother, Carter wasn't exactly the world's most reliable hero. The show leaned into parody, poking fun at the superhero genre, but it failed to find its audience. Viewers didn't warm up to the bumbling hero concept, and critics weren't kind, calling it toothless satire and a second-rate Batman knockoff. To make matters worse, it aired opposite popular shows that stole its ratings. Number 4. Turn On, 1969. If there's one show on this list that deserves the title disaster, it's Turn On. Airing on ABC in 1969, it was supposed to be the next big thing in comedy, a bold and edgy sketch show billed as a faster, more daring version of Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. What audiences got instead was so offensive, so strange, that it became infamous as one of the only TV shows ever canceled during its very first episode. The format was experimental. There was no studio audience, no laugh track, and barely any set design. Instead, sketches were rapid-fire, cut together with flashing lights, electronic sounds, and bizarre animation. The humor leaned heavily on sexual innuendo, racial jokes, and political barbs, pushing boundaries in ways that shocked 1960s audiences. The cast included a then-unknown Tim Conway, who later recalled that during filming, even the crew wasn't laughing. When the show premiered, several affiliates across the country pulled it mid-broadcast, refusing to air the second half. The reaction from viewers was overwhelmingly negative. Angry letters flooded ABC, accusing the network of peddling filth. ABC canceled Turn On after just one episode. The second episode was completed but never aired. To this day, it holds the dubious honor of being one of television's shortest-lived flops, remembered only as an experiment gone wrong.
Number 3. You're in the Picture, 1961. In January 1961, CBS premiered what would become one of the most humiliating flops in television history, You're in the Picture. Hosted by the legendary Jackie Gleason, yes, the star of The Honeymooners, this was supposed to be a fun new game show format. Instead, it went down in flames after just one episode. Here's how it worked. Celebrity contestants would stick their heads through cutout illustrations of famous scenes. Think cardboard standees of the Boston Tea Party, nursery rhymes, or historical moments. The audience at home would then watch as the celebrities tried to guess what scene they were part of based only on clues. It was awkward, it was unfunny, and it was painfully slow. Critics annihilated it, calling it embarrassing and an insult to Gleason's talent. The fallout was so immediate that the following week, Gleason appeared on air, not to continue the game show, but to apologize directly to viewers for how bad it was. The apology itself, full of Gleason's charm and honesty, actually drew higher ratings than the premiere. The network quickly pivoted, turning the slot into The Jackie Gleason Show, with Gleason simply chatting with guests. But You're in the Picture went down as one of the fastest TV cancellations in history. To this day, it's remembered as a cautionary tale. Even the most beloved star in television can't save a bad idea. Number 2. The Ugliest Girl in Town, 1968. Of all the sitcoms the 1960s produced, few are as jaw-droppingly bizarre as The Ugliest Girl in Town. Airing on ABC in 1968, it followed Tim, a Hollywood talent agent played by Peter Kastner, who accidentally becomes a female model, and nobody seems to notice the difference. The plot goes like this. Tim falls in love with a British actress, but through a series of absurd events, ends up dressing in women's clothing for a photo shoot. Those photos get him signed to a London modeling agency, and suddenly he's living a double life as Timmy, a supposed female supermodel. Every episode revolved around him juggling his secret identity, maintaining the farce, and keeping his romance alive. The premise alone was cringeworthy even by 1960 standards. Critics shredded it for being offensive, unfunny, and utterly ridiculous. The cross-dressing gag wore thin almost immediately, and audiences weren't buying it. Ratings plummeted, and ABC canceled it after just 20 episodes. What makes it even stranger is that the show actually aired in Britain as well and did just as badly there. Decades later, it's often ranked alongside My Mother the Car as one of the worst sitcoms ever made. The only real legacy it left behind is its title, which still pops up in lists of TV's most embarrassing failures.
Number 1. The Pruitts of Southampton, 1966 to 1967. In the mid-60s, sitcoms were all about glamorous lifestyles and outrageous premises. ABC thought they had a winner with The Pruitts of Southampton, a comedy built around the queen of stand-up herself, Phyllis Diller. The series followed the wealthy Pruitt family of Long Island high society, who secretly had lost their fortune. To keep up appearances and to avoid paying taxes, the IRS allowed them to continue living in their mansion, provided they pretended to still be rich. The catch was that they now had to scrimp, scheme, and fake their way through life in the elite world of Southampton. Phyllis Diller played Phyllis Pruitt, hamming it up in her trademark wild style, while Reginald Gardner played her butler. The show leaned heavily on Diller's sharp tongue and slapstick routines, but the writing just couldn't keep pace with her energy. Audiences found the premise absurd and the humor uneven, and critics accused it of being a weak attempt to clone the Beverly Hillbillies in reverse. After one season, ABC quietly canceled it. Even Phyllis Diller later admitted the show wasn't her finest moment. Today, The Pruitts of Southampton is remembered mostly as a misfire, proof that even a comedy powerhouse like Diller couldn't save a sitcom with a bad foundation. For that reason, it earns its place at number 1, not just a flop, but the flop that defined the decade. Now, back to you. Which of these shocked you the most? Did you ever hear about The Ugliest Girl in Town? Or do you think My Mother the Car deserves its reputation as the worst show of all time? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to Vintiverse. Like this video, share it with your fellow nostalgia fans, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another trip into television's strangest forgotten past.